My parents didn't just skip my wedding, they chose my sister's beach trip over watching me walk down the aisle. They packed sunscreen flip-flops and matching tote bags, while the seats with their names stayed empty on the most important day of my life. And months later, after all the guilt-tripping, the backhanded messages, the Facebook posts aimed at me without saying my name, they showed up in my inbox again, asking me to show up for my sister's wedding. As if nothing had happened. As if I hadn't stood alone at my own ceremony, pretending those empty chairs didn't break me. This time, I didn't cry, I didn't beg, and I didn't bend. I just said, "Not this time." And that was the moment everything finally changed. My name is Lyris, and this is the story I never thought I'd have to tell. Before I share it with you, I want to know you're here with me. Just say, listening in the comments, or tell me where you're watching from. Sometimes even the smallest connection makes a hard story easier to carry. And if you feel stories like mine deserve to be heard, please consider subscribing to the channel. It helps more than you know. Thank you. And now, here's my story. But before my parents chose a beach over my vows, there was a day that felt almost perfect. My name is Lyris Halden, I'm 28, and when all of this started, I was just walking through Forsyth Park in Savannah with the woman I love, thinking about nothing more dramatic than what to eat for dinner. The oak trees were draped in Spanish moss like gray curtains, kids were chasing each other around the fountain, and June's hand was warm in mine. I work as an event coordinator for an arts college downtown, so I'm used to making other people's big days run smoothly. I spend my weekdays color-coding timelines, calming nervous brides, and fixing flower deliveries that went to the wrong address. I know how to handle other people's chaos. My own family's. That's always been messier, the kind of mess you learn to step over instead of clean up. June Juniper, Westcott, is the steady one between us. She works from home as an interior designer, the kind who can look at an empty room and already see the furniture, the light, the life. She's calm, practical, and has this unnerving habit of seeing straight through people. The first time she met my family, she waited until we were back in the car, buckled in, and halfway down the highway before she said quietly, "You know, your family isn't normal, right?" I laughed it off because where I come from, that's just how family is a full explanation, not the beginning of one. That afternoon in Forsyth, June kept making little comments that didn't quite land. "You know I love this park," she said a little too brightly. "It's where everything started." By everything she meant the art workshop where we met 4 years earlier, both of us standing awkwardly in the back, pretending we knew what to do with charcoal and newsprint. That day, I offered her an extra pencil. She offered me half her granola bar. We've been splitting things ever since. We were almost past the fountain when she stopped walking. When I turned, she was already dropping to one knee in the grass, not even caring that it had rained the day before, and the ground might stain her jeans. My brain went white noise, quiet. People around us slowed down. I saw a woman nudge her friend and point. Saw a little girl tug her dad's hand and whisper, "Look." June's voice shook just a little. "Lyris," she said, "I know your family is a lot. I know I'm not exactly what they pictured for you. But I also know I want to spend my life being the person who stands next to you when they are too much. Will you marry me?" I said yes so fast I barely let her finish the question. I laughed, I cried, I pulled her up and kissed her while someone clapped from a bench nearby. For a few seconds, it was just us, and the sound of the fountain and my heart pounding in my ears. Then, right on top of the joy, another thought slipped in sharp and unwelcome. How are my parents going to handle this? My family loves to talk about Southern family values. My mom, Eleanor, says that phrase the way other people say grace. She believes in Sunday dinners, monogrammed things, never airing dirty laundry, and pretending everything is fine as long as the photos look good. My dad, Michael, believes in keeping the peace at all costs, which usually means keeping his mouth shut whenever my mom or my little sister Delaney gets worked up. My older brother, Beckett, escaped to Jacksonville with a job in insurance, and a carefully curated distance. He visits on holidays, smiles for pictures, and refuses to pick sides in any argument. And then there's Delaney, 25, blonde, tan year-round, and permanently posed as if an iPhone camera might appear at any second. Her life revolves around Instagram stories, TikTok dances, and her beloved girls' trips to Tybee Island. In that universe, I've always been the reliable one, the big sister who adjusts who drives home for birthdays, even when work is hell, who changes her own plans because someone forgot to tell mom about theirs. We picked our wedding date that same night at our tiny kitchen table in Savannah, the one squeezed up against a brick wall in our apartment near the historic district. June printed out a calendar and we traced our fingers over the months until we found it the exact date of that first art workshop. It fell at the end of next summer, late enough for good weather in the mountains, early enough that my work wouldn't be in peak chaos. "This is our day," I said, circling it in pen. "Not my mom's, not Delaney's. Ours." I meant it. I also believed naively that if I explained how important it was, they'd at least try to meet me halfway. The weekend after the proposal, we drove up to my parents' house outside Charleston for dinner. Walking in always feels the same. The smell of pot, roast, the hum of some HGTV show in the background, my mom calling from the kitchen, "Y'all wash your hands. Food's almost ready." I'd brought June home once before. That time, Mom introduced her to a neighbor as Lyris's friend and carefully avoided the word girlfriend all night. Dad asked June about her job, but never once about us. Beckett sat at the table talking sports while Delaney scrolled on her phone, occasionally glancing up to ask superficial questions like, "So do you like decorate rich people's houses?" This time, as soon as we sat down, my heart started sprinting. Halfway through the meal, I put my fork down. "June proposed," I said. "We're engaged." For one suspended beat, nobody moved. Then my mom smiled wide and bright. "Well, it's a different world these days," she said. "As long as you're happy, baby." My dad cleared his throat. "Congratulations," he added. "Guess I better start working on my father of the bride speech." Beckett raised his glass of sweet tea. "I'll do my best to get off work for it," he said. Delaney squealed, already reaching for her phone. "I am absolutely going to be a bridesmaid," she said. "But you have to let me help with colors. It has to photograph well." Relief washed through me so hard I felt lightheaded. For a minute, I let myself believe this might actually be easy. Toward the end of dinner, Mom started asking practical questions: where, when, how big. I told her June and I were leaning toward a small ceremony in the Blue Ridge Mountains somewhere with a barn and string lights, nothing too over the top. "We were thinking," I said carefully, "about getting married on the anniversary of the day we met. It's at the end of next August." Mom's smile flickered. Just for a second. Then she laughed lightly and said, "End of August, Lord, that time of year is always busy for this family." I heard the words, but I didn't let them land. To me, it sounded like one of those vague mom comments, like when she says, "We'll see," and it really means no. In my head, I translated it as logistics, not a warning. We said our goodbyes in the driveway under the yellow porch light, Mom hugging me tight and telling June welcome to the family in a tone that almost sounded real. Later, upstairs in my old bedroom, the walls still covered in high school photos and college pennants, my phone buzzed. It was Delaney calling from down the hall instead of just walking in. She asked again about the date, the exact weekend, the venue, the vibe, like she was taking notes to help me plan. I felt my chest warm at the thought that she might actually be excited for me. At the end of the call, her voice changed. Just like one tiny thing she said. "You know my Tybee week with the girls is always the last week of August, right? You're not going to put your wedding on top of that, are you?" I laughed uneasily. "We're still finalizing," I said. "We'll figure it out." She giggled. "Okay, but promise you won't trample Tybee week. It's kind of sacred at this point." When we hung up, I told myself she was joking, that she couldn't possibly be serious. On the drive back to Savannah the next day, Interstate 95 stretching out in front of us, June dozed in the passenger seat while I replayed every conversation in my head. Engagement, smiles, a flicker at the mention of the date, a busy time of year, Tybee week, sacred. I shoved the knot in my stomach down and focused on the good. I'd always been the one to adjust to smooth things over. I told myself it would be fine if I just explained well enough. After all, they loved me. They talked about family like it was a religion. Surely when it came down to it, they'd show up for my wedding. Back in Savannah, real life slid over the fairy tale pretty quickly. Between my job at the arts college and June's client deadlines, we didn't have a ton of time to float on a cloud. Still, one night that week, we sat back down at our little kitchen table with takeout containers pushed to one side, a printed calendar spread out between us. "Okay," June said, uncapping a pen with her teeth. "Let's make this official." We flipped through next summer, counting out vendor timelines and my busiest work months. Every date we landed on kept circling back to the same square, the exact anniversary of that first workshop, the one where I handed her a pencil and accidentally rewired my entire life. The box was at the end of August. "It just feels right," I said. "Our story started there. I want our marriage to start there too." June nodded. "Then that's the day." She drew a neat circle and wrote, "Wedding," in the margin. I took a picture of the calendar and opened the Halden family group chat. It's been there for years, mostly used for holiday coordination and sending each other photos of casseroles and grandkids that don't exist yet. I typed "Big Update June," and I picked a date. "We're getting married on August Amashires next year." I hit send before I could overthink it. 3 little typing. Bubbles popped up almost immediately. Mom sent a string of heart emojis and "can't wait, honey." Dad sent a thumbs up. Beckett dropped in a congrats again with a champagne emoji. Delaney posted a gif of a screaming bridesmaid from some movie and wrote, "I'm so ready." No one said, "Hey, doesn't that run into Tybee week?" For a few hours, I let myself relax. The next afternoon, while I was building a run of show for a student exhibition, my phone lit up with Mom's name. I stepped into an empty classroom to answer. "Hey, Mom." Her voice was syrupy sweet. "Baby, I've been thinking about your date." I braced myself. "Okay." "You know I'm just trying to help you," she said. "But end of August is always a crazy time for this family. Have you and June thought about maybe bumping it up a few weeks? Or pushing it to September?" I stared at the dusty whiteboard in front of me. "What's going on that makes it crazy?" I asked. For a second, there was nothing but the faint sound of her TV in the background. Then she sighed. "Well, Delaney has her Tybee week with the girls. You know that. They book that house a year in advance. And your daddy and I usually go down a few days, make a little vacation of it. It's kind of become our tradition." I pressed the phone tighter to my ear. "Mom, we picked that date because it's the day June and I met. It means a lot to us." I could hear the smile fall out of her voice even though I couldn't see her face. "Nobody's saying your wedding isn't important," she said. "We're just asking you to be realistic. Your sister has been planning this girl's trip all year. She'll be heartbroken if she has to miss it." My mouth went dry. "You're telling me Delaney's beach trip takes priority over my wedding. I'm telling you, Mom snapped that family makes compromises. You're the oldest. You know that." An hour later, Delaney FaceTimed me from her car. I answered to her grinning under a billboard for Tybee Island blue water and sand behind the text. So she said, "Without hello, you really put your wedding on my week, your week." I repeated, "It's 7 days on a public beach. Laney, not a national holiday." Her smile vanished. "Wow. Okay. Do you even care about my traditions at all?" "Tybee week is the only time all my girls can get together. We've been doing this for years." I felt heat crawl up my neck. "My wedding is one day," I said slowly. "One day that I've waited my whole life for. You can move a trip. It's not a work thing, it's not life or death. It's vacation. She rolled her eyes so hard I could hear it. So I'm supposed to tell 8 people to completely rearrange their lives because my sister couldn't be bothered to pick a different weekend. You always do this lie. You always make everything about you. Her words hit something old in me. Memories flickered, my parents leaving my middle school piano recital halfway through because Delaney didn't like the crowd. My college graduation dinner cut short because Delaney had an early flight for a Cancun trip. Somehow, I was always the one expected to understand, to be flexible, to not make a fuss. This isn't everything, I said quietly. It's my wedding. She scoffed, about to fire back when Mom's voice floated into the frame. Let me talk to her. Delaney handed over the phone. Mom's face filled the screen, tight and controlled. Lyris, honey, she said, this attitude is not like you. You're the big sister. You should want your sister to enjoy herself. That girl's trip is the only thing she looks forward to all year. And I'm the one getting married, I said. Once. I'm not asking her to skip a funeral. I'm asking her to move a beach trip. Mom's eyes narrowed. So you're saying your sister's plans don't matter, that you're more important than everyone else? In that moment, I realized I was on trial. Wanting my own wedding day to matter made me selfish. Questioning Tybee week made me cruel. We went back and forth until my head hurt. At one point, Delaney from somewhere off-screen snapped, "The Tybee house is already paid for. Every year Mom and Dad put the deposit down. You know that." That stopped me cold. It wasn't just Delaney's trip. It was their family vacation, funded and blessed from the top down. They weren't accidentally conflicting with my life. They had built a whole tradition around a week that now apparently outranked my wedding. I took a breath I couldn't quite fill. What if this year you go earlier, I asked? Or later? Or just skip one time? Come to my wedding, then do Tybee the next week? Mom shook her head like I'd suggested something obscene. We are not canceling our tradition because you refuse to be flexible, she said. I am very disappointed in you right now. By the time the call ended, Mom huffing Delaney, fake sobbing about how I didn't care about her, I felt wrung out. That night, I sat on the couch and played the audio back for June. She listened without interrupting, jaw tightening at the worst parts. When it ended, she set my phone down very gently. They don't think they're wrong, she said. They genuinely believe you are messing up their plans and that your job is to fix it. Maybe if I explain it better, I started, and she shook her head. Lie you did. Over and over. The next morning, I opened the family group chat. My hands were shaking, but the words were clear in my mind. I typed, "The wedding date is set for August, Przastus. We chose it for a reason and we're not changing it. I hope you'll be there, but it's your choice." I hit send. The little delivered check marks appeared under each name. One by one, the tiny profile circles popped up, showing they'd seen it. No one replied. No heart emoji, no thumbs up, no argument. Just silence, heavy and humming like the air right before a summer storm breaks. The first sign that things were slipping out of my hands came through a message from my cousin Haley. It was a Sunday morning, the kind where Savannah felt slow and dreamy, sunlight leaking through our sheer curtains. I was making coffee when my phone buzzed. "Hey, your mom said you're making everyone cancel their plans so your wedding can be the center of attention. Is that really what's happening?" I stared at the text until the words blurred. Suddenly, the story I had lived was no longer the story being told. In my mother's version, I wasn't the daughter trying to protect a meaningful date. I was the selfish one, the demanding one, the difficult one. I typed back carefully, explaining the date. The significance, the deposit. June and I had already put down the fact that Delaney's trip could easily be moved because it wasn't a job requirement or an emergency. It was just a beach vacation. Haley didn't reply for a while. When she did, her tone had softened, but it wasn't comforting. "I get it. But you know how older people are. They see things differently." Translation. Your mom spoke first, and people believed her. Later that afternoon, during a staff meeting at the Arts College, I sat silently while my co-workers calmly discussed scheduling conflicts and solutions, actual communication, real compromise. I realized how easily I handled tension at work. No panic, no fear, no guilt. The contrast made my chest ache. Why was it so different with my parents? Why did their disappointment feel like a verdict instead of an opinion? That answer hit me harder that evening when I stumbled onto my mother's Facebook post. There it was, paragraphs filled with vague disappointment and martyrdom. It's sad when children forget who sacrificed for them. Some people only think of themselves. Family used to mean something. The comments filled up within minutes. So true. Kids today don't appreciate anything. Praying for your family. Not one person knew the truth. Not one person questioned her. I hovered over the comment box, my fingers trembling with anger. June came up behind me, resting her hand on my shoulder. "Don't," she said softly. "They'll twist whatever you write." I knew she was right, but the helplessness stung. If I stayed silent, the lie became truth. If I spoke, it would be fuel for more lies. By Wednesday, I couldn't stand being inside my apartment, so I drove to Athens to visit my Aunt Corinne, my mother's older sister, the family member who never talked in half-truths. She greeted me on her porch with a tight hug, as if she had been expecting me. We sat in her backyard under the shade of a pecan tree, cicadas humming overhead. "Tell me everything," she said, "but this time, tell it from your point of view, not the version you think they want to hear." So I did. Every detail. How my mother insisted I change the date. How Delaney treated Tybee Week as holy. How I was painted as selfish for refusing to sacrifice my wedding. When I finished, Corinne let out a long breath. "Baby," she said, "this didn't start with your wedding. This started decades ago." She reminded me of something I had buried deep: my senior awards ceremony. I had been nominated for a statewide art scholarship. My parents showed up late, left early, and told me afterward they had rushed home because Delaney didn't like crowds and was crying in the car. When I cried too, my mother had scolded me. "You're the big sister. Stop being dramatic and help us keep things calm." I froze as the memory returned in vivid detail. The fluorescent lights. My mother tugging Delaney's hand. The feeling of being invisible at my own milestone. Corinne leaned closer. "Your mother built her whole parenting life around keeping Delaney happy. Everyone else had to shrink." I almost asked why me, but the answer was already forming. Because I was the easy child. The one who didn't cause problems. The one who could be counted on to let things go. Driving back to Savannah, I thought maybe that would be the lowest point. But that night, Delaney posted an Instagram story, a picture from last year's Tybee trip, sunlight and sand and perfect hair, captioned, "Some people don't respect family traditions anymore. It hurts the most when it's your own blood." Her friends responded instantly, "That's awful. You deserve better. Cut the negativity out." Negativity. That was me. Again. For the first time, I wondered how many of my childhood conflicts had been retold the same way. How many times I had been cast as the problem because I didn't fight back. How often silence had rewritten my intentions. Sitting on our couch with June beside me, I felt the weight of years settling on my shoulders. "I'm tired of being the one who bends." June nodded. "Then stop bending." I swallowed. "I'm keeping the date." "Good," she said. "And whoever comes, comes." Later that night, when I opened my wedding spreadsheet and typed Mom and Dad Halden into the guest list, my hands shook, not because I feared they wouldn't come, but because I was finally starting to believe they might not deserve the place I had reserved for them. 2 weeks before the wedding, I mailed out the last of the invitations. I stood at the little post office downtown, the counter, smelling faintly of cardboard and old paper, dropping each pink envelope into the slot with a mix of hope and dread. When I got back to the car, my phone buzzed. It was Beckett, the brother who never caused trouble because he never got close enough to be part of it. "Hey, Lai, I can't come. Work's busy." That was it. No apology, no warmth, just an exit disguised as logistics. I knew he wasn't choosing his job. He was choosing not to cross our mother. Delaney's RSVP arrived the next morning, a single checked box not attending. Beneath it, she had written in looping script, "I will not change plans I made a year in advance. Hope you understand." She had never called herself I around me before, it was always M. Her new tone felt like a door shutting between us. An hour later, she posted a story, a selfie of her in sunglasses captioned, "Protecting my peace from toxic people." The first domino fell in the extended family group. A cousin reached out privately, hesitating before saying, "Your mom's been telling folks you don't care about family anymore, that you're prioritizing yourself above everyone else. Everyone else," meaning Delaney. Dad stayed silent, completely silent. No text, no call, no, "we're figuring things out." Just absence, as if pretending nothing was happening would cushion the blow of what they were choosing. June tried to comfort me. "Maybe they'll change their minds," she said. But hope was starting to feel like a bruise I kept pressing on. 3 days before the wedding, my Aunt Corinne called. "Honey," she said quietly, "your mother is booking a place in Tybee for the whole week, the exact week of your ceremony." I felt my throat close. Not only were they not coming, they were celebrating somewhere else. I imagined them laughing on the beach, drinking wine on the balcony, acting as if I hadn't invited them into the most important day of my life. When we drove into the Blue Ridge Mountains the day before the ceremony, the air felt thinner, the sky wider, everything tinged with green and gold. June's parents had arrived early, stringing lights across the rafters of the barn venue, arranging flowers, hauling coolers. My chosen family moved with such effortless love that it made the empty spaces hurt even more. Inside the chapel, the wooden pews were divided left and right. On my side, 4 chairs sat empty, each marked lovingly with a name: Mom, Dad, Beckett, Delaney. The sight hit me like cold water. Those chairs weren't just seats. They were the shadow of every moment I had hoped my family would show up, and they didn't. Birthday parties, school plays, college presentations. Now my wedding. An hour before the ceremony, a distant cousin pressed an envelope into my hand. "Your parents asked me to give you this." Inside was a card printed with gold vines. No congratulations, no apology. Just a single sentence written in my mother's careful handwriting. "When you're older, you'll understand that family should always come first." I stood there staring at the words until they blurred, until the meaning twisted into something sharp. They had decided that honoring Delaney was family. I was not. I didn't cry. I thought I would. But instead, a strange clarity washed through me, like stepping outside a storm and realizing just how loud it had been inside. Corinne found me in the hallway a moment later. She straightened the straps on my dress, then looked me in the eyes. "You aren't missing anything today," she said. "You're only missing people who didn't want to be here." When the music started and June turned toward me at the other end of the aisle, the empty chairs no longer felt like a wound. They felt like an answer. A final, undeniable truth about where I stood in my own family's hierarchy. And as I took June's hand as we said our vows under twinkling lights and pine beams, I felt something close to peace. But peace didn't erase the reality waiting for us. I could feel it already gathering in the distance like thunder rolling across the mountains. Because if my family had skipped my wedding without shame, they wouldn't stay quiet afterward. Not for long. For 2 days in Key Largo, it was just me, June, and the ocean. We turned our phones off when we landed, checked into a resort that smelled like lime and salt, and let the world shrink to a balcony, a bed, and the strip of beach below. We slept late, swam, and pretended there was no such thing as a family group chat. On the 3rd morning, the silence felt heavy instead of peaceful. Lying by the pool, I kept staring at my black screen. What if something actually happened? I asked. June sighed, then said, "All right. But we eat first." We ordered fries, sat in the shade, and I switched my phone back on. Everything hit at once. Dozens of missed calls, a wall of texts. The Halden family chat showed more than 200 unread messages. At the top were my mother's. To those of you who chose to attend Lyris's event instead of standing with the family, I hope you're proud. You have no idea how deeply you've hurt us. Delaney had layered her own commentary on top. I never thought my own family would betray me like this. Imagine picking sides against your own sister. If you didn't know better, you'd think I'd banned them from the wedding instead of begging them to be there. A few cousins pushed back. Haley wrote, "You skipped your daughter's wedding for a vacation." An older aunt replied, "We don't know the whole story," which really meant we've heard your mother's. Beckett hadn't said a word. Outside the chat, it got worse. While we were saying our vows, my mother had texted June. "You have turned Lyris against her own family. If you truly loved her, you'd help her make this right. This is not what real love looks like." My chest burned reading it. June typed a single reply. "We're on our honeymoon and won't be part of this. Please don't contact me about it again." She set her phone down and said, "They were always going to find someone to blame. I'm fine if it's me." On Instagram, Delaney had turned the whole thing into a performance. A black and white selfie with the caption "Family" has to go both ways. Some people forget until it's too late. A beach shot labeled "You find out who your real people are when everything falls apart." Her friends flooded the comments with heart emojis and sympathy for a story they didn't actually know. Even Beckett avoided taking a stand. His only message to me was, "I don't want to be in the middle of this. Please don't drag me into it as if I'd thrown a grenade instead of invited him to my wedding." Sitting beside a turquoise pool with the smell of sunscreen in the air, I finally saw the shape of it. Nobody in that thread wanted to understand what had really happened. They wanted the version of me who always bent so Delaney could stay comfortable. Anything else felt like betrayal. Later that afternoon, someone in the group asked, "How's the honeymoon?" Haley answered, "They're in Key Largo, looks beautiful." Within minutes, Delaney snapped, "So you're on a beach vacation while this family is falling apart, and you're sipping cocktails while mom cries herself to sleep." My fingers hovered over the screen before I typed, "This family didn't fall apart because I got married. It fell apart because you chose not to come." No one replied. My mother's icon flashed like she was about to say something, then went still. I turned my phone off again and shoved it into the bottom of my bag. June handed me a cold drink, tapped her glass against mine, and said, "To choosing us." I looked out at the water and understood that when we went home, I'd have to decide whether I was done choosing them. The quiet in our apartment when we got back to Savannah felt fake, like a stage set. I turned my phone on and watched the notifications crawl across the screen, voicemails from my mother, texts from relatives, tags in screenshots of Delaney's posts. Her Instagram was a steady drip of quotes about letting go of toxic people and moody beach photos. One showed Tybee sand and the caption, "Some people chose themselves. I chose family." My mother was preaching to her own audience on Facebook. "It breaks a mother's heart when a child walks away from everything she was taught," she wrote. "Sometimes you pour your whole life into them and they still throw family away." The comments were full of prayers and you did your best. No one thought to ask what I'd actually done. A few days later, Beckett texted, "Can we talk, just us?" We met at a coffee shop near the park. He started with my parents' feelings. Mom was devastated. Dad was caught in the middle. They felt blindsided. I reminded him I'd told them the date months in advance. He shrugged and said, "You know how Mom is." When I asked if he thought they were wrong, he stared at his cup and finally said, "It's not really my place to say. I don't want to pick sides." That was the moment something in me let go. If your sister's wedding isn't your place, what is? He hadn't just missed my ceremony. He'd decided his comfort mattered more than standing next to me. Not long after my dad showed up at our door without warning, he sat at our kitchen table and said he was sorry he hadn't come, that he'd wanted to, but he couldn't go against my mother. When I asked whether he thought I'd been wrong to keep the date, he dodged, saying he just wanted peace, that he hated conflict, that these things are complicated. It's not complicated to show up for your kid's wedding, I said. It's not complicated to say, this isn't fair. He rubbed his forehead and murmured that I didn't understand what it was like when my mother was upset. For the first time, I heard what he wasn't saying. Keeping her calm had always been more important than protecting me. When I told him that watching and staying silent made him part of it, he winced, but didn't disagree. All he had left was, "I'm sorry," repeated until it meant nothing. After he left, my phone buzzed with a long message from Delaney. She said she'd been the most hurt by all this, that I'd destroyed the family over one day, and then, unbelievably, that she was willing to forgive me if I came to her wedding next year. "If you show up for me," she wrote, "we can start fresh." In her story, she was the generous one offering mercy to the sister who'd wronged her. In mine, she was the person who'd left 4 chairs empty and now wanted me to pretend none of it mattered. I didn't answer. Instead, I called Aunt Corinne. She listened to everything: Beckett's neutrality, my father's excuses, Delaney's offer, and then said, "They don't want you back. They want you back in your role. As long as you keep shrinking to fit it, they'll call you a good daughter. The second you stop, they call you selfish. So if I stop trying to fix it, what does that make me?" I asked. "Honest," she said. That night, after June went to bed, I stood in the dim living room looking at one of our wedding photos. In it, we're under the wooden beams in the Blue Ridge barn, laughing oblivious to the 4 empty seats. My phone lit up on the coffee table with another call from Mom. I watched it vibrate until the screen went dark. If they were determined to see me as the problem no matter what I did, then chasing their approval was pointless. For the first time, the idea of choosing myself didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like the only way forward into the life I'd just promised to build. The envelope arrived on an ordinary Tuesday night, thick enough to feel expensive even before I turned it over. My name was written in looping gold script, too perfect, too polished, like Delaney had chosen a font that could erase the past year if you stared at it long enough. I carried it to the kitchen table and sliced it open. Inside, an invitation to her Outer Banks wedding wrapped in layers of ribbon and vellum. No note. No acknowledgement of the 4 empty seats at mine. No apology. I stared at it until the edges blurred. "They think I'll just show up?" I whispered. June looked up from her laptop. "Do they?" By the next morning, the pressure campaign had begun. My aunt texted, "Family doesn't hold grudges, sweetheart." Another wrote, "It's time to let it go. Your sister is trying. You should too." None of them mentioned what Delaney or my parents hadn't done. None asked how I felt. Then my mother called. Her face appeared on the screen, perfectly made-up hair, curled lipstick, fresh smile, soft in a way I'd learned to fear more than raised voices. "Con Guy," she said sweetly. "Let's put the past behind us." For a moment, a tiny spark lit in my chest. But then she added, "Con Phi Jen Koi Delaney, no Janchun Huang Con Rat Nhi Roy." There it was, the demand dressed up like generosity. I asked, "Nhuang Con Kai Gi." She blinked just once, thrown off by the directness. "No Jiao Long Lam Ki Kong Ku Sun Hu Vei." No. No Chu Jung Hu Lam. So I was the one who had caused the suffering. My wedding, the seats they left empty, their decision to throw a vacation instead of supporting me. Somehow all of it had been rewritten into my cruelty. That afternoon, Delaney sent her own message. A long paragraph that looked like an apology until you read it. "I'm sorry if you felt hurt. I understand you think you were right. I hope you can honor our family during my wedding. It wasn't responsibility. It was performance." June read over my shoulder, shaking her head. "This isn't an apology. It's a PR release." I didn't respond. Beckett did, surprisingly. He texted, "I know you didn't do anything wrong. I just... Can't say that to Mom. It was the closest thing to honesty he'd ever given me, and it still wasn't enough. A truth whispered privately is still a betrayal when your silence helps the lie grow. By the end of the week, the pressure hit its peak. My mom said if kon jen, gia jin se, kon hu truok. I almost laughed. Gia jin jang kon hu truok tu lao roi me. But I didn't say it. I just held the phone to my chest and let the truth settle in. That night, June sat across from me at our dining table flipping through her planner. The Outer Banks weekend is here, she said. If you want to go somewhere else, we should book it. I do, I said. I want to go anywhere that isn't there. June met my eyes. Are you sure? Yes. I'm done living the same story over and over. I finally texted Delaney M. Kong, Tai Joy Lich, Vi Koi Chi. Chi Kung Se Kong Tai Joy Lich, Vi Koi M. Not this time. The reply came fast. Chi Luke Now Kung Ich Ki, Chi Fa Hong Moi Thu. For once, I didn't respond. I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain. I simply set my phone down and let the silence do the work. 2 hours later, June and I booked a weekend trip to the Keys. When the confirmation email arrived, something inside me unclenched. It felt like stepping through a door I'd spent my whole life staring at, but never dared to open. I wasn't choosing spite. I was choosing myself for the first time, and I knew they wouldn't take it quietly. On the morning of Delaney's wedding, I was lying in a hammock on a quiet stretch of beach in the Keys. The water was so clear it looked unreal, the sky so bright it seemed impossible that somewhere 2 states away, my family was gathering to reenact the same rituals that had always pushed me to the edges. I kept my phone off until noon. When I finally turned it on, it buzzed like a trapped insect. My mother's newest proclamation was waiting. Some children forget the people who raised them. Delaney posted a photo of her ceremony overlooking the dunes. She'd left deliberate gaps in the front row like empty placeholders meant to imply I'd abandoned her, not the other way around. Her caption read, "Even when family disappoints you, love remains." Hundreds of likes. A flood of sympathy. A narrative neatly packaged. But then, a private message came from my cousin Haley. People are saying Delaney acted childish. Everyone saw how she treated you. Don't let them fool you, folks are talking. A crack in the armor. Someone else was finally seeing what I'd lived through. Another message arrived, this time from my mother. Longer, sharper. Kon ja lam hut gia jin, me kong kon koi kon la kon gai nua. I waited to feel crushed. Instead, I felt a strange quiet in my chest, like a room that had finally been emptied of noise. I typed back, Kon kong lam hut gia jin. Kon chi tu choi jb joy soon hu kong quan trong. Then I blocked her. And Delaney. And anyone else who had turned my life into their moral fable. A week after the wedding, Beckett showed up in Savannah. He stood on my porch like he wasn't sure he was welcome. Em was right, he said. I'm sorry I didn't say anything sooner. I nodded. I forgive you. But I'm not going back. He understood. Maybe for the first time in his life, he understood. When things settled, I drove to Athens. Aunt Corinne greeted me with open arms and warm tea. Kon ja lam jiu ma me kon kong bao gio lam, she said. Kon chon han fuk kong phai hin an. June and I returned home that evening and filled the house with people who had chosen us friends, co-workers, neighbors. No speeches, no roles, no hierarchy. Just laughter spilling into the kitchen and music drifting from the living room. As I stood among them, I realized something fundamental: family wasn't something you earned by bending yourself into smaller shapes. It wasn't a place you begged to enter. It wasn't built on guilt or tradition or silence. Family was the people who stayed, the people who showed up, the people who didn't require you to shrink to fit their comfort. Looking around our living room, string lights glowing, June's hand in mine, the hum of soft conversation, I finally felt what freedom tasted like. Jia Jin Kong Mat Ji, I said quietly to myself. Nochi joy hin dang. For the first time in my life, I didn't need anyone's permission to be happy.